Welcome to a day in the life of a garden. Today we're going to plant a tree, a catalpa tree in the woodland. Come join us. My name is David Morton. I'm the Landscape Curator here at Brucemore. It's a 26-acre estate located in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and it's one of the few National Trust historic sites in the Midwest. And this show is about how to create this little piece of paradise in your own backyard. A day in the life of a gardener. So welcome to a day in the life of a garden. And today we are going to plant a tree. Now this is a catalpa tree. It's a deciduous tree and it's starting to lose its leaves. But fall is a good time to plant trees or any shrubs or perennials even, because they start to go dormant and they can establish their roots during the dormant season and over the winter, and then they're hardened off and ready to go come springtime. So don't let the fact that there's no leaves on here fool you. We also have a bunch of little ones here, and again, this is a catalpa tree. It's called Catalpa speciosa. It's a northern catalpa. They get yellow flowers on them in the summer around June, July. They're a white flower with a little like yellow and purple spotting in the center. They're also pretty fragrant. So they're an interesting tree and a good shade tree. And they get to be about 50 to 70 feet tall. And we're gonna plant this one in our woodland area. We have a bunch of trees planted in the woodland area. We just wanted to add one more because why not? So let's go plant the tree. One of the things I like to do when I plant things is put this plant starter in there, water it in with plant starter. And what that does is it helps absorb any shock, and it's richer in phosphorus, which helps for root growth. And it's a tablespoon in this little watering can here, which is almost a gallon, not quite, but just put a little tablespoon in there. Then I'm going to fill that with water, and we'll bring that out with us so that when we plant the tree, we can water it in with some of our plant start. Just another little trick of the trade. Now I need to fill it with water. And we can go right over here. Water, water, everybody needs water. Whoa. Wrong way, lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. No, other way around. Oh, let's get the tree. Can't forget the tree. Jeez Louise. Okay, here we go. We got our gloves. Now we need a shovel or a root slayer, which is even better. Root slayer. And we'll bring a shovel just in case. Pointed shovel. I don't know, it's been pretty dry out there, so it might be a little hard, but okay. I think that's all we need. Now, a catalpa likes full sun or part sun. So I'd say as long as it's getting about 5 hours of direct sunlight, it should do okay. So that's something to think about if you're planting a catalpa. And that's a good rule of thumb anyway, for most things. But you always want to check that out when you find something you like, especially a tree. Is this a sun tree or a shade tree? Meaning, does it like shade, or does it want full sun? Or can it tolerate a little bit of both? So a catalpa can tolerate a little bit of both, which is good because we're putting it in the woodland. With the woodland, there's never any place with direct sunlight all day long. So it's a good spot to put it. There's a little spare spot right around here. And there's some wild weedy stuff that we really don't want in here anyway. So this spot, it's gonna get some afternoon sun as well as some morning sun. Midday sun, it'll be a little shady, which might be good for a sapling like I've got here. So it's pretty hard dirt. I didn't think to wet the area. You could do that, you know, you could get the area nice and wet. As you can see, it's pretty dry. We haven't had any rain for a while, so things are drying out a little bit. So we'll want to probably get the watering can out here a few times. And what you want to do while it's starting to grow, we're going to want to dig a hole that's about twice as wide as the plant, as the container it's in, and another maybe 6 to 12 inches deep. Oh, look we got a brick here. Well, that's interesting. Wonder what we'll find here. Of all the spots, I find treasure. But we'll keep those bricks because who knows? They look fairly new. When we have any kind of large excavation going on the property, that is one of the things that we tell folks that are doing the digging, is if they find anything like that, they need to let us know. It could be historic, it could be important. Because I found them, I will take them to Jessica and let her know about them. She'll probably tell me, yeah, no, that's fine. But that's important to know when you're on a historic site anyway, not to just toss things that you find. And like we've been doing restoration on some of the buildings around here, we want to make sure that they're not uncovering anything. Here's another one. I know Mrs. Douglas had gazebos out here, or a gazebo out in her woodland area, because out then it was out in the country. This was. Now we're pretty much in the city, but she would like to stroll out here. And they left this area as a woodland, and we still have deer and fox and coyotes out here. So I've dug a hole. The good thing about a smaller tree like this is that you don't have to dig a big hole. You know, if you have like we planted some hemlocks, and they were in ball and burlap. So they're 500 pounds and they're huge. And that's a lot of digging. So I look at that and I think, okay, it's not too deep. You want it a little deep, and you also want the flare to show. I don't want it quite level with the ground because I want to create a little bit of a well here so that when we do water it, the water goes to the roots and doesn't just run off. So that actually looks pretty good. So this is actually pretty good. It's got a lot of nice roots here. We've been growing this since springtime, but I'm still going to go ahead and break up some of the roots so that I can give it a good head start. You don't want it to be too, what they call root bound. If you look down here, there's a lot of roots there. So it's actually probably a really good time to be planting this thing. Too much longer in here and it might have been a little root bound. So you might think that by doing this, you're actually hurting the plant. And it does give it a little bit of a shock. They call it a shock, which is why we want to add that plant start that we mixed. That'll help absorb some of the shock. The reason I'm doing this is to get those roots to break up so they're not root bound. And what I mean by root bound is when there's so many roots in here, there's very little dirt and just almost all root. That's really not good for a plant either. So it's important to transplant your plants, or, you know, into something bigger, or put them in the ground like we're doing with this one. You'll oftentimes see that if plants have been in a container too long, they're root bound. They also aren't, it's really hard to keep them watered when they get too root bound. So that's a little too low now that I dug up some of the roots. So I'm gonna put some of the soil back in here. I do like to break up the clods. It won't absorb as much water that way. So you just break it up a little bit. We're gonna add a little bit more in there and then put it back in here. That's about where I had it. So then you take all your soil, and again, you want to break up any clods that you have. If this had been about 3 weeks ago, this ground probably would have been just really nice and not so dry, but we just haven't had any rain. I'm not worried about the plant necessarily, except that I will want to come out here and give it some water before winter hits, because once winter hits, you really can't give it any water. And that'll help get it going, because when you first plant something, like a tree especially, it's as if it's still in that container. you don't want to, forget about it. And usually, like for the first 4 years out here when we planted all these new trees, we had these buckets out here, and we would fill those buckets once or twice a week depending on the weather. And then they had this little drainage hole on the bottom of them, and that way we could keep them watered if it didn't rain. And that was a job in itself. So now you can see that it's in there. Again, we don't want to bury it too deep. If it's a bigger tree, you usually want to keep the flare open. They call it a flare. It's where one of the main roots come down. Here it looks like there's the flare. Again, this one's younger, so it's not as important, I don't think. But if it were a bigger tree, that would definitely be something you want to watch out for. So now we've got it planted. I like to make sure that all that dirt is packed down around its roots so that there's no air left. And you can see that we want to keep the top part of the roots a little exposed there. And now we're going to water it in with our root start. So let me grab that. Bring that over here. So it's like it's still in a container, as I said. And you'll want to give it a nice drink. And you can see that little well holds the water so it doesn't just run off. And then I would let that sink down, knowing that we still have a little bit of more water to give it. And that lets you know also too that it's a draining well. Now this tree can actually sit in water. It's often used in rain gardens as well, which is a garden that collects runoff water. And so oftentimes the plants that are in there will have to sit in there for a while, have to sit in that water. But it helps, like, instead of having all that water run off. So you'll see them a lot of times in parking lots and that kind of thing. And the drainage or the runoff from the parking lot will go into this rain garden, they call it. So now that it drained a little bit, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna give it all that's in this watering can. Let it have it all. Again, I don't want it to run off, so it seems to be draining pretty good. And we'll check it again tomorrow. And I'll probably water it tomorrow too, because it's not gonna rain. And then I'll come out here at least twice a week, if no rain, and give it a drink. I won't be feeding it with the plant start every time, but I'll at least fill up my watering can because there's no hose right around here. If you had access to a hose, you could obviously just use your hose and fill up your little well, let it drain down, maybe fill it up again, let it drain, and then come back and do it again in another couple days. You planted a catalpa. It'll be fun to watch it grow. Thanks for joining us on this episode of A Day in the Life of a Garden. Join us next time when we go to Noelridge Park, which has another garden, and get inspiration on our next episode. Remember, every garden counts. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to see more, hit the like button, the notification bell, and subscribe to the channel.